Hi, I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to Chai Beauty, where I get to share my thoughts, my dreams, my aspirations, my visions for the future. And guess what? You get to be along for this journey because we are in this together.
And so, in this next episode, it's going to be a little different because boundaries is set up in three parts. And as we talked about the foundations of boundaries, what are boundaries, the myths of boundaries, we then move to part two where it kind of breaks it down in categories. If I'm honest with you, it talks about boundary conflict. And so it goes into several different ways. So you can see boundaries in your friends, your family, your spouse, your children at work, the digital age, yourself, and in God. And so I personally just, and for this book, you really have to read it for yourself. And you're probably like, Chai. I'm like, yeah, you really do, because like chapter 7 through 14 really talks about specifics and like breaks it down in a sense that it's very easy to understand and how you can see yourself in this. It kind of gives you examples, but it leads it into like scripture because part 3 is about healthy boundaries and what are healthy boundaries. And I personally think that if you really are like on this journey of boundaries, buy this book, read it, and enjoy part 2 and understanding what are like what does boundaries look like and what not even what boundaries look like, but what are ways you see yourself or you see your family, friends, and whatever you're going through in these lack of boundaries. Because if you can't identify yourself in these lack of boundaries, then what are we working on? What are we trying to remove ourselves from? What have we not gotten wisdom on to move forward? So that's what I have to say about part 2, chapters, I think I said 7 through 14. So, as we wrap up, there is a second section, which is part 3, and it's developing healthy boundaries. It talks about resistance to boundaries, so it continues to build upon part 1, but we're able to see those in a different light and then, like, talk about forgiveness again, talking about anger. And so, I didn't want to continue to do. You're probably like, Chai, why didn't you just like do the rest of chapter 7 through 15? Because I was like, this is really self work. And I think once you have the boundary book and you have the time, also, I don't have children. So there's a part about this about children. And I was like, I'm not there yet. But I do have like nieces and nephews and cousins that are really young that I can implement this on. And so that gave me a good light. But I was like, I would repeating what I've said in the last 6 episodes, not including this one. And I said, these are just my personal experiences. And I did not want to be repetitive. I wanted to give you new information. So as you continue to read, you will get to chapter 16, which is how to measure success with boundaries. And I really like that because it breaks it down into 10 steps. So, step 1 is to resentment, our early warning signs. So, it's talking about that anger. It talks about step 2, a change of taste, becoming drawn to boundaries and lovers. So those healthy relationships. Step 3 is joining the family. Step 4, treasuring our treasure. Step 5, practicing baby nose. Step 6, stepping in, rejoicing in the guilty feelings. And step 7, practicing grown up nose. Step 8, rejoicing in the absence of guilty feelings. Step 9, loving the boundaries of others. Step 10, freeing our no's and our yeses. Step 11, mature boundaries, value-driven goal settings. And then it goes until it wraps it back up to like how in the first chapter we saw a day in a life with boundarylessness. I think that's how you say it. And so then it just goes back to that story and it talks about a day in a life with boundaries. And so that's where we all want to get to at some point. We want to get to a season of a day in a life of boundaries where we're able to utilize those 10 steps and truly implement them in a way that they feel normal to us and the people around us that are in alignment with us can agree with us. And you're probably like, Chai, you say a lot about agreement and alignment. I think alignment is very important because if you don't have the right people in your life for that season, sometimes this can be useless and detrimental to yourself. Sometimes you can get into a season of depression, a season of anxiety because the right people aren't with you. But the goodness about it is that when you realize you're not with the right people, you're not in alignment, and things are just going crazy, you have an opportunity to say, Jesus, help me. You have an opportunity to say, I'm lost. I need to understand the difference between who's with me and who's for me, and you don't even have to get rid of those people, but let me put them in the right categories in my life, as long as they're not toxic and abusive. And so I encourage you to read the Boundary book. I encourage you to read chapters part 2 and part 3 because it really is vital information. So chapter 7 through chapter 17 really does help you. And they are just basically started with a very high level version of boundaries, and then which are the ones that I really talked about from 1 through 6, and then 7 through 14 gives you like attention to details on the same thing, but you're going further in, and you're able to talk about anger when it has to do with your friends, family, and work is how they did it. And I think it's just wonderful. I think it's amazing. But for me in this season of doing this podcast, it's not meant for me to read chapter 7 through 17 on this pod. I may come back to it. I don't know yet. But if you are, I can't do all the work for you. Like in the book, it says I can't grow for you. And if I can't grow for you, that means you have to grow for yourself. And so the way I'm encouraging you to grow for yourself is to buy this book and read chapters 7 through 17. I love you. I appreciate you. And you got this. Hello, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this pod. Also, the past pods and all the ones you anticipate in the future. I've loved your comments and your reviews on Spotify. And as we continue to grow, I continue to think of other ideas. So currently, I'm investing in my website. So visit www.chaibeauty.org. There's no space. And you can see how I'm extending our community together because we are a family. So thank you.